I'm John Law, this is Chasing Cars, and the second generation Skoda Kodiaq has some seriously big shoes to fill. The first gen car was a firm Chasing Cars favourite. It packed 7 seats into just a medium SUV footprint, offered great value and heaps of driving enjoyment. The new car builds on that with its MQB Evo platform and slightly larger dimensions, or at least in length, but with the same wheelbase. And I guess today's question is whether, one, it's still the choice for that upper medium large SUV in the market, and also whether or not it's actually better than the car it replaces. So we're here in Bendigo on this car's Australian launch to give us our first taste.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
So what exactly do we have here? Well, Skoda is selling the Kodiaq in 3 distinct variants. The new Select, which replaces the Style, the mid-spec Sport line, and the range-topping RS, which is due here later this year. Now, the list price is $1,700 more than before, but Skoda argues you get a whole lot more value, $4,000 more value with the inclusions, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. The exact car you see here is a launch edition special. There's only 200 of these coming to Australia, and it's basically a fully kitted out version of the comfort-oriented Select. It also shows off the new facelift really well, I think. You've got these lovely matrix LED headlights, scrolling rear indicators, and of course fully redesigned front and rear bumpers and fresh sheet metal down the sides, plus new alloy wheel designs, and this new Bronx Gold colorway, which suits this spec quite well, I think. Despite the new design, Skoda thankfully hasn't thrown out one of the Kodiaq's best features, these little rubberized door defenders that are an absolute lifesaver at the car park. But I'm not actually sure if the design changes are really for the better. They feel like more change for change's sake, because the old car was just so handsome, especially in velvet red with the Sportline pack with all the black lettering. This new car just doesn't look quite as sharp, but maybe that's just me, so let me know your thoughts down below. Plus, that bit of extra bulk that you can see means a longer length, which means more boot space. Improving both with 3 rows up and only with 2 rows up, the Kodiaq continues to be one of the absolute most practical medium to large SUVs on the market. Look how much space you still have with these 3rd rows in place, and as we'll get to in a minute, you can actually sit back there if you're an adult, albeit only for brief periods, but you can do it. You also get clever inclusions. You've got a space saver spare under the boot floor, this lovely boot mat that's removable, and this new aluminium storage divider thing that Skoda's been doing for a while, but is just such a handy extra tool to have. You can stop boxes sliding around in the back of the car, and it's great if you don't like things rattling or sliding around. The presentation of the new Kodiaq jumps to whole new heights. Not saying the old car was bad or ugly, it just felt very fit for purpose, where the new car sprinkles a little bit of tinsel on top in a really nice way. This car, as you can see, has the cognac brown leather upholstery, which is actually optional on the base car and doesn't cost anything extra, which is something we really like to see. Brings a little bit of extra colour and pop to the car, though obviously it's not going to be for everyone. Even without the cognac colour in here, you still get some really nice materials. Here in front of the passenger, the secondary glove box lid has these lovely cross stitches. Up on the dash, you've got this really nice soft touch material. The steering wheel is leather appointed and lovely to hold, and in the door bins you still get flock lining, so stuff doesn't rattle around in there. And so those are all little things that make this Kodiaq feel really nice on first impressions. Problem is, when you start diving a little bit deeper, you find some scratchy materials. Below the belt line on those door cards, for example, doesn't feel that high quality. Plus, there's some fit and finish issues we've noticed on the launch with this car. For example, the glove box buttons just don't sit right, and the glove box itself sits a little off-centered. Plus, when we were out on the roads, all 3 examples of cars tested had some form of cabin rattle, either from just in front of the driver, on the passenger side, or the door cards, which I think goes to show that this car has lost a little bit of quality in the new generation, because the old car always felt pretty well put together. Maybe some of that comes down to the early models we're testing here, but we'll have to go back to the Chasing Cars garage for a definitive verdict. What we don't need to really test anymore, though, are the practicalities of the Kodiaq, because just like in the boot, this thing majors on clever storage solutions. This tray in the center here appears to have 2 smallish cup holders, but you can slide this bit of plastic back and you actually get 4. You've got space for 3 phones with 2 cooled wireless charging pads down there, easily accessible pair of USB-C ports. And if you want to shut that all out, you can just slide this roller door cover across there. Of course, being a Skoda, we've got the signature umbrella in the doors, but in the Kodiaq, we've got something new, which I find really exciting. This little black thing isn't a vape or a storage canister for your chewing gum. It's actually a screen cleaner. Now, you could probably buy something like this off Alibaba or whatever, but the standard inclusion is just such a nice touch, and you just rub it across the screen and say bye-bye to fingerprints. And it's even got a really nice little storage cubby to sit that, through today, hammering on back roads, bumps and around corners, it never fell out. That sort of stuff is great attention to detail. The screen though is a big improvement. At 13 inches, it's 3 inches bigger than the car it replaces, really nice and responsive with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But not all's perfect, because Apple CarPlay and Android Auto did drop out a couple of times during testing, and although this interior is really clear of those hated haptic touch buttons that have plagued Volkswagen Group cars for the last few years, there's one little spectre of those, and that remains down here, which is the on-off switch below the touchscreen, which is exactly where you want to rest your finger. And a couple of times during driving, we found that to be a little bit annoying. But apart from that, the usability is really amazing. You've got this customizable row of shortcut buttons up the top here, and you've got fixed shortcuts down below. And another great detail of this car, I keep coming back to the cool surprise and delights, this trio of dials down here to control a whole bunch of different things. Not just aircon, but for example, this right one for the driver does temperature, does heated seats, and because we're in the up-spec launch edition, it does the optional ventilated seats in here. The center one does fan speed, air direction, volume, and you can even select the different drive modes doing this, and it's all customizable through the screen. So yeah, the Kodiaq has really got a very thoughtful interior. The front seat of the Kodiaq is a pretty nice place to be, but the back seat is not far behind, because this car majors on rear seat space and practicality. Look how much room there is for me at 188 centimeters tall. I've got so much knee room, heaps of toe room under the high set seats, and even under the Launch Edition's panoramic sunroof, I've got a very reasonable amount of headroom. And that's with the backrest in its middle position. I can recline it a little bit further, or I can bring it forward, and like the last Kodiaq, the bench is also on sliders. Speaking of the bench, it's more supportive than a lot of Japanese and Korean SUVs in this class. Feels like you could really sit here for a very long period of time. But it's not all perfect. Like the front, there's a couple of material and quality issues back here, namely the scratchy door tops, which in this car, which is 65 grand drive away, that feels a little bit cheap and nasty, and the armrest isn't quite as soft as you want it to be. I guess you could say those are pretty insignificant nitpicks though, because you've got plenty of practicalities, integrated sun blinds. The door bins here are really nice and generous. This Launch Edition's got heated outboard seats, 2 USB-C chargers, a 12-volt socket, and this really clever little storage caddy down here, which can be used for phones, odds and ends, little tissue boxes. And it's got these rubberized cup holders that pop out really neatly, so you can use them for cups or not. Really like that. Of course, the smartphone devices here, so you can keep the kids entertained on a long road trip, and when it's time to put the smartphones away, you've got a neat little pocket in the back seats here to store them very, very cleverly indeed. Let's not beat around the bush. The Kodiaq may have 7 seats, but the 2 back here, just like the first gen car, are not quite vestigial, but certainly occasional use seats. The other slight issue with them is that the curbside in Australia is the double width seat, which is a little bit heavier to slide forwards and backwards, and something kids might struggle to do. But honestly, for an occasional use seat back here, it's really spacious. And if you think of the Kodiaq as a 5-seat SUV with 2 extra seats, it makes a lot more sense than if you go thinking it's a true 7-seater. Safe to say, the new Kodiaq nails it when it comes to practicality and packaging and value inclusions. But what about on the road, where the old car got all of that right, plus a fantastic drive that managed to walk a really nice tightrope between being sporty and being comfortable in the way that sort of the best cars do, and especially those with European roots. And we're off to a good start, because the new car has an updated version of the old vehicle's MQB platform. It's on the MQB Evo underpinnings, and they're a pretty wholesale adjustment of what was there before. A lot of it's to do with technology, but there's big improvements to adaptive dampers as well. But I'll come back to those in a second, because what I want to focus on first is what's under the bonnet. You get a choice of a 2-litre turbo petrol or a 2-litre turbo petrol, both in new, slightly different tunes to before. The Select and Sport line, which arrive first, both get the 140 TSI tune, which outputs 140 kilowatts and 320 newton meters. A power bump of 8 kilowatts and the same torque doesn't seem like a huge jump, but in the real world, the new car feels that bit more tractable and full-bodied in its responses. Perhaps it's down to a recalibrated 7-speed DSG automatic transmission, or perhaps it's down to manipulated torque curves. Now you can also get the 195 kilowatt tune of this 2-litre in the Kodiaq RS that's coming soon, and we'll have a full review of to follow. But safe to say this engine is adequate, pretty decent, but not firecracker fast, and doesn't have a huge amount of personality apart from being generally pretty slick. The ride comfort has changed a little bit in the Kodiaq. The base model Select on its passive dampers and 19-inch alloys is my pick of the range. I think it rides really naturally. There's a good amount of travel and it soaks up bumps very well indeed. The Sport line gets slightly bigger 20-inch alloy wheels, and then this car we're in gets adaptive dampers. They're the new DCC system with the MQB Evo, and they have 15 stages of individual adjustment in individual mode and 3 basic settings being comfort, normal and sport. And they're a little bit more advanced than those that came before in having a separate rebound and compression adjustment valve. That being said, apart from around town where we're in comfort mode now, which I've affectionately titled cloud mode due to the very cute cloud-like icon here, it's extremely comfortable. But out on the open road, comfort becomes way too soft, above about 80 k's an hour, and you can see it now as doing just speeding up to 80 k's an hour outside of Bendigo. There are undulations that the body control doesn't quite check. You can ratchet things up to normal using this simple drive mode selector, which does improve the standing a little bit, but still at 110 k's an hour on the motorway, especially on the broken roads around us here, it feels like there's a bit too much float. And then going into sport mode makes everything just a little bit too stiff for the road, which leaves you in a funny conundrum where you often end up in individual mode, playing around with a touchscreen, trying to balance the 15 mode DCC based on what you feel is best, or at least that's been the impression initially. I'm constantly searching for the perfect Goldilocks setting in the adaptive dampers car, where I find the Select on its standard passive dampers to be just pretty damn good. Really absorbent and really comfortable, and yet still talented without huge amounts of body roll. Speaking of, the Kodiaq retains its signature handling. It is a really adjustable, fun, and quite light feeling large SUV to drive. It definitely doesn't feel big and heavy, something like a Santa Fe can tend to do. It's got a nice fleet-footedness to the way it rides, and the steering really helps that. This car's got the optional progressive steering, which means that you've got less turns lock to lock when you're traveling at high speed, and you have a lighter rack around town, and that just makes this car both easy to thread through narrow streets and also confidence inspiring on the open road. Visibility is also really good. You've got a nice big windscreen and fairly low window lines out to the side as the driver, and the same is certainly true of the back seats, with that panoramic roof letting plenty of sunlight in. We come to safety as well. The new Kodiaq basically has everything it needs for a 5-star ANCAP rating, and has also already achieved a 5-star Euro ANCAP, which is likely to be ported across for the same rating here in Australia. You've got things like front cross traffic assist, you've got reverse AEB that works for pedestrians, and all the usual implementations of safety assist. The good news is that we're now, especially in major brands, starting to figure out just how to implement these systems so they're helpful rather than a hindrance. For example, the driver attention monitoring in the new Kodiaq is really clever. It doesn't constantly beep at you and bong at you like so many Chinese SUVs do. Rather, this Euro SUV just intervenes when it probably should, when you've been playing with a touchscreen for a little bit too long out on the road, for example. Also, the speed limit assist can be set to just be information all the time. It doesn't reset when you turn it on, and it doesn't bong at you at all times. And honestly, in modern cars, even that is just such a win. The lane keep assist too is pretty good, and the adaptive cruise control feels very mature. More technology, fresh cabin presentation, and a little bit more exterior presence. Those are all hallmarks of the new Kodiaq over its predecessor. It also remains better value than most large 7-seat SUVs like the Hyundai Santa Fe and Kia Sorento, and crucially still delivers that more mature driving experience than key rivals like the Mitsubishi Outlander. That said, it doesn't really move the game on from the first generation Kodiaq, which was such a peach. Our pick of the range, at least at launch, remains the base level Select with its passive dampers. It's a sweet car to drive and feels really well balanced and like you're not missing anything at all. But stay tuned for a full Chasing Cars Garage review coming soon and comparisons with competitors. So make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of that content coming up soon. And as always, thank you very much for watching Chasing Cars.